Hey, welcome back to Mornings with the Mayor. I'm your host, Robert Dye. We're back for another episode on an inside look into our personnel, our various departments in our city, and kind of how we're now navigating the coronavirus. As I said in the last episode, these are intended to be an inside look into our city staff, our community partners, and special guests as we kind of discuss the inner workings of our city, how we're moving Farmers Branch forward, and diving into different thoughts and ideas of interest to our community. And so today's episode 2, is definitely a hot cup of coffee and features our fire chief, Steve Parker. Chief Parker, how you doing?
Mayor, I'm doing well. Thanks for the cup of coffee, my virtual drink with you. I'm looking forward to to spend the morning with you. I'm looking forward to spending
socially distancing.
Yeah, but you feel like it feels like you're right with me. So
yeah, it does. You're so close. So just to start, you're from Canada, eh? And just want to hear about that journey from Vancouver to the Houston area to Dallas, and how you ended up making your way to Farmers Branch.
Yeah, that's sort of a fun story. That was 34 years ago. No, yeah, 34 years ago, I came down to go to fire school at Texas A&M University, and I ended up finding out that there was a school down here. I had to write a letter because there was no internet. I had to go to the library to figure out what the address was and to learn about the program. So that's going old school. So I ended up down here January of '86 and went to A&M and did fire school. I met a bunch of guys that were volunteer firemen and EMTs and paramedics in North Houston. And we would go do the weekends just down there and hang out. So it was super fun. March, I left to go back up to Vancouver, where my hometown is. And by that June, I was back in Houston going to EMT school and living with one of my buddies, Tony Spitzenberger, and living at his mom and dad's house because I was much younger then. And volunteering for a fire department, Ponderosa. And next thing you know, I was an EMT, and then I did special skills. And then I went to paramedic school, and during the paramedic school time, we had a house party, and I met a young lady. And the next thing you know, it's 34 years later. We've been married for 32 and got a couple of kids, and I've been in Texas for almost my entire life. So very, very peculiar.
And so that young lady was the esteemed Dr. Patty Parker.
The esteemed Dr. Pat, but I knew her back when. I knew her back when. That's right. When she was a lifeguard working two jobs and a high school graduate. So I go back to the start with her.
And so I guess that's where Grace, just had it in her to always want to be a lifeguard as well. I know that she worked at Farmers Branch Rec Center for a little while, didn't she?
Oh yeah, she did, and she graduated from Turner, and then went to UT Tyler, graduated with Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology, and now she is the aquatics coordinator for the city of Frisco. So yeah, it's sort of in their blood. Both my kids sort of took after their mother, because Andrew's just about ready to graduate from UNT with an education degree. So
yeah, and he also moonlights at the rec center as well. So I mean, you and your family are definitely fully ingrained in our community and giving back in very different ways. So we're just grateful for y'all and all that y'all are doing.
But like I said, I get to say I've been a Farmers Branch resident for 20 years, and so I'm sort of feeling like I'm legit now. And we did McLaughlin and Vivian Field and Turner and baseball and hockey and the parks. So yeah, I'm all in, and it was the best thing we've ever done is to move up here, and it's changed my life, and I'm just thankful every day that I get to work here and live here and raise my family here.
Yeah, we're grateful to have y'all, and y'all are just wonderful people, and so it's just exciting to watch it all, especially as Grace and Andrew are growing up and coming into their own into the working world. But given that it's been that amount of time, like you said, 34 years from when you made your way down to Texas to get a career started in the fire department world, what has changed the most from when you were on the ground yourself through now as fire chief? And I'm assuming that everyone's a lot bigger, faster, stronger than they used to be, and it's a little more technical. But love to hear your input on that.
Well, they're not better looking. I mean, so
Oh,
that's one thing I still have. So
there we go.
the one thing I got is, yeah, no, 34 years. I mean, I get back in the 80s, because that's when I started. It'd be the mid 80s would have been things like when I was a paramedic, I didn't wear gloves. I didn't start that. This is something you didn't do until HIV/AIDS started coming in. So you sort of went through that first pandemic dealing with that. On the fire department, we would ride on the back of the fire truck and just hold on, and you'd just sort of did what you did. And I just missed the horses, so I didn't have to worry about that. But yeah, things about understanding. I was going to say the complexity of the job. I mean, a fire is a fire, a heart attack's a heart attack. Obviously, the medicine is getting to be more technical. What our paramedics can do now regarding using a 12 lead AKG in the field, or sending telemetry, or interacting with a cath lab from your living room, that would have been science fiction when I started. You know, so that's changed. The impact of what the job is. Nobody really talked about health and safety and fitness. Really, nobody understood the impact of being exposed to a carcinogen or any type of an infectious disease. That really sort of wasn't part of what the discussion was, and that to me has been the biggest change, is understanding the underlying um, danger of the job. I mean, I just never thought about it. Now that's such a focus for the fire department, about doing annual medical screenings and screening for cancer, screening for cardiovascular disease, which we've been doing. And actually, we've had two firemen that we've identified and who've had surgery and are recovering, and one's back to work. Because of starting to think proactively, we need to be thinking about what we're sending these men and women into, and we need to be responsible for it, and we need to make sure that they stay healthy. So that's probably the biggest change, Mayor. People caring for the community, people wanting to do a good job, people wanting to care for people. That's sort of the core of the fire service. That hasn't changed. So it's more the technical piece around it, about administrating it, and sort of understanding the long-term impact of what it means to do this job over time. So.
Yeah, and and one of the main things that I've always, cherished about the men and women that work for our fire department is just the bedside manner that they carry with them. Everyone's just super nice, super attentive, super helpful, and I've rarely heard. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard a negative comment about anyone that's interacted with someone from your department when they've come to care for them, and not only that, but continue to check on them later. That you just don't get that, I feel like, in a lot of communities, and it's just great to see and hear, at least from our residents and businesses here.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously technically excellent. I mean, they can deliver amazing care, our cardiac arrest resuscitation rate, the way we manage stroke, the way we manage trauma. I mean, they're superb clinicians. I'd say that. But the one that I get the comments to, and it just sort of echoes what you said, is people call about their compassion and their care, and how they looked after their family member, or how they looked after the whole family during that medical event, and really caring for that group. And that's something you can't train. That's innate in our firefighters and paramedics, and that's just something that I really treasure, and that makes it special, being able to be the fire chief here. Is that's the caliber of men and women that we have.
Yeah, and when you talk about the kind of technological advances that you have, the equipment that you all get to use now that you didn't have when you were on the ground yourself, but when you think about that, what are you looking forward to with the future of firefighting? I know in the past we've talked about, is there ever potential for the use of drones, and are we able to send those out into the field ahead of time? While we're sitting back in the fire station, going through digital field command and kind of taking and surveying what's happening at that fire, so that when the firefighters actually get on the scene, the plan's already in place. We already know what's happening and how to respond. And how do you see that as a use as kind of an opportunity, or is it potentially a challenge? And what other uses are you guys looking at or excited about in the future?
No, I think it's going to be a fantastic benefit for the fire service. I think 5G and what the infrastructure that's coming in that's going to allow us to be able to do is going to be just a game changer. Like you said, I think you'll be able to have a drone, or be able to have cameras streaming live video from the fire engines, or technically you could almost have them streaming images off of the firefighters themselves back to a centralized area. So you could technically have a command center at our consolidated dispatch center that would serve all 4 cities. And you'd have a command team that would come into duty, and they would be able to manage everything from a centralized point where it's controlled, and to be able to sort of understand what the complexity of what's going on immediately, and be able to communicate back and forth real time to those crews and be able to give command and control. Not unlike how the military from Florida coordinates events in the Middle East. There's no difference to that, and I think that technology is coming. I think in EMS, I think you're going to see the birth of telemedicine. We're sort of looking at it now as a way to be able to manage surge during this pandemic, and putting a position in place to be able to manage calls in virtually through a consolidated dispatch center, to be able to triage and make determination. You get an ambulance, no ambulance, and to be able to make a triage system. I think in the future that'll let us be able to extend the life of our ambulances. It'll be able to allow us to keep ambulances and engines in service for calls that would have higher criticality. I think what the changes the fire services had to make during the pandemic is going to be what's going to be business as usual in the future, about being able to work remotely and be able to control information, and then be able to use resources appropriately based on what that information is. So,
Yeah,
I'm really excited about it.
exactly. And when you talk about, telemedicine, I feel like even this conversation that we're having right now on Zoom, and the fact that we've all been forced to kind of shelter in place and do more things virtually and digitally over Zoom through video conference calls, I think is going to make people more open to that idea and to that technology, and to trust it going into the future. That's going to make it definitely a lot easier for the EMS to communicate with hospitals and other people as we're working through cases in the future. And when you think about the future, and especially regards to Farmers Branch, I'm sure your favorite project, Fire Station number 2, has definitely been keeping you busy during this time. So I just that's kind of our next, latest and greatest fire station. What's the current status, and how are you feeling about that getting completed during this time? What has been some of those challenges?
Well, the pandemic's been a challenge.
Yes.
When the stay-at-home order was given, there was direction regarding the construction industry. Even though it's an essential, there was requirements about managing the workforce and being able to allow those employees to work safely. So currently, we're not allowed to have more than 50% of the staff that was on site on the 16th of March. So, and then we're trying to require the ability to work with social distancing, and then to be able to keep less than 10 people in any one place. And so that's really been a challenge for our construction manager, to be able to coordinate vendors coming through and working to be able to complete the project. I think if you go by right now, and I got some pictures to share with you so you can sort of see what's going on. The building is I'd say 85% complete. Right now, what you're sort of watching is the final bit of dirt work that's going on as it relates to preparing for landscape. So I would be hoping that you're going to see, maybe by the first week in May, grass, which would be nice. And I think that'll offset the building beautifully. Internally, again, working with the different trades and vendors, just on things like the supply chain, on getting pieces to be able to finish things, like something simple like a piece of vent to be able to let us get a gas inspection and get that signed off. Well, that's now 3 weeks of lead time. So something that would be, just sort of pick it up in a couple of days, now that's 3 weeks, and that puts you behind a little bit. So, the goal was that we'd be having our grand opening ceremony this Saturday, the 18th, after the weekend after the Masters. But now I think it's looking like we might be moving in some sort of a manner, maybe middle to end of May is what I'd be thinking. And again, I think once the control order for the shelter at home is relaxed, and again, I think that's going to get extended a little bit, at least till mid-May. That again will maybe help us be able to get the last few vendors and contractors to come in to let us be able to move in and start operating the building.
And so, did you purposely plan that to be the weekend after the Masters, or?
Very purposely.
Very purposely. Perfect. But I guess
7 years ago when we started the project, I looked.
Circle Masters 2024.
That's right. And
or 2020, sorry.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I guess walk us through some of those renderings.
well, there you are. So there's the fire station. So you can sort of see it in all its glory. Just finishing up, the concrete's in, the sidewalks are in. Right now, what's going on is getting ready for landscape. So a lot of dirt's coming in. The lights are up. As you sort of walk around the building, you can see there's very few contractors there. That's again managing the workload. This is the front door looking in from Alpha Link, and it's a nice walkway that'll be lit at night to the front door. On the left, that glass is our community classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and then to the right's the bay.
That's what I've always loved about the design and the way that's just coming together is the natural light that's in this building on how much glass, but then also, what was nice about it was the kind of modern feature, which is that red accent wall that kind of comes around that corner. That
I love it.
That, hey, this is a fire station.
It is a fire station, yeah, and it is. There's tremendous amount of natural light. We put that in design again with the modern electric code and the heating code. I think we've got a very efficient building. I think for a lot of the rooms, you're probably not going to need to turn a light on during the day. There's so much light that splashes in there. This is sort of a view looking from the east going west, and the stone structure right in front of us is actually that is our storm shelter. So
Okay.
that's part of the design. And then as we go around the building here, you can sort of again looking from Alpha Link at the Alpha looking back. There's that initial grade. We've got the topsoil down, and that will slowly turn green. And there's a tremendous amount of landscape that comes in there to highlight the green space.
Yeah, it's going to be just a tremendous and beautiful facility. And for the guys that have been, and guys and women that have been hanging out in Fire Station number 2 for the last 50 years, I'm sure they're going to be appreciative as well that we finally got them some, they can call home and feels like home.
Oh, it feels like home. It's very, very, very nice. So, and again, I think it blends in nicely. So again, what's sort of going to come up is there's going to be some, once the silt fences come down, they'll regrade that to get a better looking grade. It'll really bring the building out. So
And
that's what we showed you. That was our rendering.
Well, I was impressed then. I'm impressed now as I drive by all the time as I'm heading over to our east side, especially to eat and get some coffee and do some other stuff. And so it's fun to see that kind of nestled right there into the old Holiday Park. But what the location of this fire station number 2, that was kind of the final driving force right behind us getting ISO class 1.
It did. It allowed us to reposition the building. It allowed us to take advantage of a lot of stuff. So as the community's changed over the 20 years I've been here, I mean, obviously, we've had the two classic stations, Station 2 and then Station 1, which now is Firehouse Theater. When the West Side started to be able to start developing, we had to have ability to deliver service. So thus the Station 3 now was built in 2007 and opened. And that allowed us to be able to have a presence on the West Side. It's been a perfect spot. This is actually now going to be our busiest fire station, and just because of the growth. And I know we were sort of preparing for a more commercial look, but now with the residential and the population here, this is a great located fire station. So once Station 3 moved west, that gave us the ability to take Station 1, which was 50 years old, and really put it in the middle of the city and off of Webb Chapel. And that's our best performing fire station as it relates to response time. So we have an engine, a truck, and a paramedic ambulance there. And then once that station was located there, then we could look at Station 2 and move that again a little further to the east and a little bit off of a more useful artery to be able to move throughout the city. Alpha and Valley View is just a perfect road system that allows us to serve all of the West Side and be able to provide service back into the middle of the community. And it's really going to be in a good spot for us. And we're not going to have to deal anymore with Vitruvian and the traffic associated with getting through that development now. We're going to be much quicker into the rest of the city.
Yeah, I think it's definitely it's going to be a tremendous asset, not only to us, but as we consider, in tech and our partnerships with Carrollton, Addison, and Coppell, this location I think better suits us to not only continue to serve the Vitruvian area and parts of Addison where we've been helping out
Oh yeah.
originally, but better serve Farmers Branch as well in that same capacity. So it's absolutely tremendous, and just glad it finally came together, and we're right on the cusp of potentially cutting that final ribbon for
That close.
this close.
That
But
close.
when you think about helping out and where we are right now in not only Farmers Branch, but just in America and in the world, dealing with coronavirus. I first want to thank you and definitely thank the entire department for the tremendous effort they've been putting out, for putting their lives definitely on the line and being at risk, and helping to keep our community safe and responding the same way that they always have, with just amazing response times in the care, to look after those in our community during this trying time. But what's keeping you up at night as we're dealing with, and then how is your team dealing with this and helping our community and stay safe during coronavirus?
Oh, well, the team is doing a fabulous job. They're here, they're delivering service, they're ready to go. You really wouldn't even know the difference about how we respond to calls, except they're dressed a little bit differently. And so when people come into a paramedic company comes into your house, they're going to have a much different level of personal protective equipment on, a face mask, an N95 respirator, a gown, gloves, and that's obviously to protect them from dealing with the virus that we're dealing with, and then more importantly to protect the patient again, is to have that isolation. So the guys and gals are doing a great job. We're running COVID patients. We're taking COVID patients to the hospital. So we're here and we're doing it. We're still running fires. We're running car wrecks. The service is being delivered, and I couldn't be more proud again of the crews doing that. That again, that speaks to their character and the high level of professionalism that not only does our fire department have, but the U.S. Fire Service and our hospital and all the healthcare providers. It's they're there doing their job, and then that's what I'm just so impressed by. What keeps me up at night is obviously the health of our firefighters and paramedics. Every time I hear a call dispatched, it hurts a little bit that there could be a possible bad exposure. But again, we spend a lot of time, Deputy Chief Vargas, Battalion Chief Latimer, with the battalion chiefs, the crews, daily briefing them about what's going on, refreshing our COVID protocol, refreshing our PPE protocol, refreshing our decontamination protocol, so that we're staying cutting edge and limiting our exposure to something that could be bad. Something else I'd sort of be worried about is taking down the control orders too soon. I think you've got to use science and you've got to use medicine. And I never thought I'd be using math, because I always told my teacher I'm never going to use math. And well, I'm kind of using it now, about looking about a logarithmic growth, or looking at arcs, or looking at the slope of a curve as it relates to what that looks like. So, I know it's hard on the community. I know it's hard on the businesses. I know it's hard. Well, it's hard on everyone. But it's one of those things that we need to do to protect our health system. I think the control spots efforts that are currently under place in Dallas County have kept our growth down to a point where our health system can manage this over the near term. I think we still have a little bit of a way to go. I think we're looking at maybe peak case end of April, early May, and then that's going to have peak death that'll come after that. And then hopefully that curve turns over and starts coming down. And once that happens, I think leaders like yourself, the judge, the governor, can say, okay, this is now when we can start thinking about reopening. That would be the best case, even though the most difficult. And then that would let our system to be able to sort of regroup. And I think we have to be prepared for this to come back again, and to be able to manage it over the near future until we have some sort of a vaccine to be able to sort of give us a bit of immunity.
What's, and I'm glad to hear that you feel that by taking the action that everyone did, in mid March to shelter in place and kind of, keep really enforce social distancing and making sure that people were aware, closing, public facilities, anywhere, places where people could gather, or saying, hey, we're going to take it from 50 down to 10 rather quickly. How much do you think that actually helped in terms of flattening this curve? And has it definitely, where do you feel Dallas County's kind of response in all this ranks with some of the other areas, not only in our country and the world, that have taken aggressive steps as well to kind of flatten this curve?
I think it's made all the difference in the world, Mayor. You don't want to compare against New York or Detroit or Philadelphia or New Orleans, Seattle, but we have a very different experience right now regarding the ability of the healthcare system to be able to manage the load. I think our case numbers for a metropolitan area of over 6 million people would be reflective of the impact of those control orders, and to be able to sort of be able to manage it. And, every time, you sort of see people walking 6, 10 feet apart, or you see nobody interacting, or or a restaurant closed, that strikes me, at least again, as the chief of the fire department, is that's going to be one less person that our paramedics are going to have to help, or that's one less person that's going to have an ICU visit, or that's one less person that might lose a family member. And I'm grateful of the decision that you made, and what the judge made, and what the governor made, to be able to look after the state and our residents, to be able to get through this and not have the loss of life that some of the larger urban areas have in the States and across the world. So
Yeah, I've been grateful just looking at the numbers that, thinking that this could have been a whole lot worse, and seeing where we're at, and, some of the optimism that we're seeing in other places, not only in the country, but even out of the governor's mouth, as they start to realize where we're at. What do we need to do to reopen our economy, to let our citizens and at least Dallas County, but also the state of Texas, to get back to what is probably going to be a new normal. And when you think about the new normal, what does the other side of this look like to you? And I put that in terms of, what does that look like potentially long term, but then also short term, in terms of what do we need to do as we come out of this to slowly get back into a full swing of being able to move around the county in terms of going back to work, restaurants, concerts, sporting events, and other things. And is this a long drawn out thing, or is it kind of a shorter recovery?
God, that's the $1 million question, Mayor. I would think, again, sort of listening to the different professionals talking about the system, I don't think the normal comes back until you get a vaccine. I think that's going to be the big issue. I think the issue about having large gatherings again is going to be a challenge as it relates to being able to manage the growth. I mean, until you've got a much broader spectrum of testing, to be able to understanding where the virus is, because you're just sort of guessing, is going to be a tough one. I think the key goal right now in the short term is that graph of caseloads has got to flatten, and it's got to come down, and it's not doing that yet. It's not growing exponentially, but it's still generating growth. I think once we get through the end of April, early May, I think that's when you're going to see that, and then you're going to have a little bit of time to come through that. Then I think it'll open it up slowly. I think gathering in large groups is going to be tough. I think on a couple of reasons. I think it's just going to be that an individual person going, I'm uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
But I think we'll start turning back on. I think depending on different parts of the countries are going to have different experiences. I think once we get into 2021, I would think you're going to see field trials of some sort of a vaccine. And I think if we're successful with that, then all of a sudden you come now to a manageable flu-like event where you don't have such a massive population potentially vulnerable to be infected. And I think the key is simultaneously. Again, that's that peaking. So I think you're going to see life be based on growth, drop, growth, drop until there's that immunity in the herd, either through multiple infections or multiple waves, or hopefully a vaccine.
And I mean, is this kind of, I mean, I would liken it kind of like the beach, that first wave is kind of your biggest wave, right? And then we would assume that, assuming we're still able to manage this, that people are still practicing some level of social distancing and being aware of what could happen as we come out of this, that, like you said, if it does start to creep back up, the hope is that those waves out into the future are going to be, not as steep as they were during this first one, just because we have a better understanding of how to treat this. A lot of people have had it, got past it, and maybe have built up a little bit more of immunity to the effects of coronavirus, that it's easier to go about our life out into the future.
Yeah, I would hope so. I think the issue about now having testing in place and having the system in place, that it's going to be more widespread. You see it ramp up every day.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just have to go back and look at 1918, 100 years ago, about you had more than one wave, and
Yep.
and I think people now understand the significance of the disease, and I think people are going to understand when that control order comes back on to be able to limit that growth again, to keep the healthcare system functioning, and I think that's going to happen a couple times.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you point to the 1918 Spanish flu, and I think now about the precautions and orders that we've been given are very similar to the orders that were put in place back then. If you go back and look at the old kind of messaging that was on buildings and in places, it's like rec centers are closed. Don't gather in groups of 10 or more people. Stay 6 feet away. And to see that was the messaging then, and that's still the messaging now, is kind of reinforces that idea that history does repeat itself. And just to see that, it was
works.
weird, but also enlightening to see that.
Yeah, and I would take that again when you look back in history about those control. There's only certain ways to be able to protect yourself against a virus where you don't have immunity to it, and it's those control orders.
Yeah.
And I think to me, I take comfort out of is that flu pandemic went away. I mean, obviously, it took a lot of people because there was no vaccine back in 1918, but you had to let it run through the population, and try to manage it. And different cities had different outcomes as that system went through. So yeah, those are old, tried and true methods to be able to keep people healthy. And again, when you look back, it worked, and the country recovered from it, and we moved on. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, I've found myself going back and studying some of the stuff that not only happened and how they, treated that disease, the orders they put in place, but I also went back to take a look at, how did the economy, not only how was it impacted, but how did it recover? And is there something in there that's scalable, or that you can kind of find a connection or correlation to how this might be similar here? But given that our population is far greater, given the complexity of our businesses and everything else, how is it truly impacting things in terms of, back in 1918, there wasn't as many restaurants and stuff as there are now, and family businesses and small businesses that are being impacted because we're not allowed to go out and be a part of them the way that we were, and spend money and do business with them. So it's just, grateful for the efforts that the federal government has been trying to take to help stimulate some of that and give us some relief to help lessen the effects of what's happening in our economy right now. But, given some of the, what's been kind of your proudest moment, not only through all this, but just your time as chief of the Farmers Branch Fire Department?
Well, Mayor, my proudest moments right now is those fire stations are full, they're functioning, they're delivering service under a very trying situation. They all have families, but they're here and they're doing their job. That I can't be more proud of that group of men and women than right now. This is the high water mark of my career, to understand what the American Fire Service and what the Farmers Branch Fire Service means to their community, and what their character is, and what they hold important, and they hold looking after people important, and they're here doing it. And that's again true for the police department. It's true about the hospitals, the nurses. Mayor, it's true about our park staff, our public works staff. The city's here, it's working, it's ensuring everything's going on. Our garbage is being picked up. We can flush the toilet. We've got clean drinking water. The city's moving on. We're still delivering service and looking after the community. And yeah, I think it's easy to be proud when the economy's booming and everything's happening. That's easy, but to be proud when it's hard is this is where I'm the most proud of the fire department and the community.
That's great to hear, because I can't echo your sentiments anymore in terms of the gratitude that I have, not only for our first responders, such as the men and women in our fire department, but also our police department, and what our staff has been able to do in terms of pivoting so quickly to not only embrace the community in a hard time, but find ways to still deliver that excellent service that we've always done. And, if there's anything, and I know you sent out a list earlier, and the community responded so strongly, so great with their response. But is there anything else that you guys might need in the coming months that we might be able to point to say, hey, can we come together again to show our gratitude for the men and women on the front lines, keeping us safe and putting their lives at risk each and every day?
I think where the focus needs to be, Mayor, is going to be on our recovery as it relates to the community. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people have contacted myself and Chief Hale saying, hey, what can we give the fire department? And we always direct them to MetroCrest and say the need in the community now is going to be on people who are food insecure. And that's going to get worse, not better, over the short term. And I believe the focus needs to be on housing and being able to give rental assistance and keeping people in their homes. That's where the focus needs to be. That's where I would think that would make the fire department feel like we're making the most difference, is if the community stepped up and looked after the people who really needed it. We're in good shape, Mayor. We're well taken care of. We're supplied. We're supported. We hear it all the time. I think where the community needs now to focus is to supporting our partners at MetroCrest and the school district, and making sure people can stay in their homes and have food, and that can then be able to get back up on their feet as our way of life turns back on.
Yeah, and I agree and appreciate you saying that, and I'm looking forward to you addressing council on the meeting on the 21st to give us an update not only on coronavirus and COVID and where we're at, but also an update with MetroCrest services, because I believe that is a time that we all need to come together as a community and step up and help them in a more meaningful way than we've done in the past. And I think we'll probably be looking for some recommendations to do so, to reinforce your comments that is where our efforts and resources need to go to help those struggling in this community that need, food assistance, that need rent assistance and bills and other things during this time when it's just so hard to get. So thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership during this time. And please send my best to the men and women at the fire department for all that they're doing. I do it myself with social distancing, of course. But I do want to get into kind of the final thing, kind of the end of the episode. I call it kind of just rapid fire. I'm going to give you just a few quick questions.
Oh gosh. Okay.
I know. But first I'm going to go with rank the following national treasures in order: Justin Bieber, Neil Young, Rush, and Alanis Morissette.
Well, obviously Rush it's at its own level.
Obviously. Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Then I'd have to go Neil Young, and then I'd have to go Alanis Morissette, and then the Biebs comes in last.
But I was surprised you didn't sub anyone in for like Drake or anyone.
Yeah. I'm too old. Drake? Who?
But has your golf game was your golf game better before the kids left the house, or is it better now?
It's not as good as Patty's, and that's still an issue for me. So, but. I've been at home, so I've been practicing chipping in my backyard. So I've been looking forward.
The short game is where the dollars are made. We all know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just have to beat Patty. That's all I got to do. So that's the goal.
Good luck.
I know.
Doctor for a reason. As a resident, where's your favorite place to relax or enjoy a quiet moment in Farmers Branch?
Oh,
outside of the
uh,
golf course, of course?
my favorite place to relax. I like Rawhide Park. I like the
Yeah.
walk around the river. I like that to me is just a nice place to be. But you know, we've during our stay at home, Patty and I have done a lot of walking in our neighborhood,
Mhm.
and I've just really learned to appreciate how much I like it, and how that is relaxing, and how I feel comfortable there, and how it feels like home. So, you know, it's just a nice place to be, and so I feel home here. So I get almost goes back to your first question about coming from Canada. That's true, but this is my home and this is where I'm comfortable.
That's good. Glad to see Texas has converted another faithful follower.
Uh,
But it's also great to see people social distancing in Rawhide Park and still taking in that same beauty that you just described to find, a piece of just mental clarity to, keep sure to allow us to have some mental health and get out and, take in some sun and do some other stuff. And the fact that we've, kept our parks open during this time, that's been one that we've definitely gone back and forth on, but something that it's like I didn't want to close or put into place because people need that. They need that now. And as long as they're responsible in the way that they're moving about our parks, I'd say keep after it. Stay active, stay healthy, keep your mind right during this difficult time. And we do have Parks and Rec staff kind of allocated throughout our parks to remind people to keep the appropriate distances. So hopefully they're enjoying one of your favorite places as well as we move through this, and hopefully towards brighter days sooner rather than later. But
yes.
I do want to thank you for coming on, spending some
Oh
time with me.
yeah.
I know you're very busy. The information you've provided is absolutely fantastic and very insightful as we look into not only what's going on, but what you all are doing to keep us safe and to still maintain the same level of service that we've always had from our fire department. So thank you. But just want to thank everyone for watching Mornings with the Mayor. I'm Robert Dye. If you like the show, check out our next episode, which will be timely. We'll be having a conversation with Tracy Eubanks to talk about some of the resources they need, what they've been doing, what they've been seeing, and how we can further help them out. So until then, I say stay safe, stay home, stay positive, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.